Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the White Belt MMA podcast. And it's an absolute pleasure to have on the show today UFC Welterweight now, Michael Gilmore, who was also a contestant on TUF 29 this past year. So, Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And it's real humbling again to have people reach out and want to talk with me and talk about my journey. So I appreciate you as well.
Yeah, and thank you again for coming on. And again, like your story, like on especially in this Ultimate Fighter this past season, like in Ultimate Fighter seasons, we want to get a little glimpse of like each fighter's story coming onto the show, right? For you, you're an alternate coming on. So, let's just start from the start. How'd you get involved in combat sports in general? Because some people, right, either it's in the family, they have to do it because their family are into martial arts. Other people just stumble upon it. But for you, what was your story? What was your start?
So I played college football. I played football actually most of my life for 15 years, from 7 years old all the way up through college. And my last year of college, I think it was like sixth game. I dislocated my knee, and it ended my football career. I tried to rehab it to try out for professional teams, and I just never got the agility and speed that I had when I was playing football. And while I was recovering, I had watched, was just watching TV. I think it was Spike TV at the time, and they had advertised a WEC event where Dominic Cruz was the headliner, and it was right around my birthday, and it was in Columbus, Ohio. So I went. It's not that far of a drive here from Michigan, so I went and watched. The backstory with that is I went to high school and wrestled with Dominic Cruz, and so when I went there, that was my first time watching any MMA. I'd never watched it on TV, nothing like that, and I watched it and I was like, oh, this might be something I can do someday. And a few months later, when I got back, to more activity after my recovery, I saw a sign on the side of the road that said local MMA fights this Saturday, and it gave the address of where it was at. And I went and watched. And actually, it was kind of weird because there wasn't really a governing body or anything like that at the time. And they had asked me to fight that night. I was like, no, you guys are crazy. I'm not going to just step in there. And like, they're just like going to the crowd because I think they needed more people. And I was like, no, I don't want to, zero training in this. I'm not going to get in there and try this out. But I did ask around about what the best gym was in the area. And everyone said Murcielago MMA. And so I looked them up. And I joined them, and 10 years later, here we are.
Yeah, that's crazy. And again, you step into the MMA gym, right? Especially coming from like a collegiate like background in football, being an athlete for most of your life. Tell us how like that first experience in that martial arts gym was, because I know for a lot of people, right? For average Joes like me, like the first time that they step foot into like an MMA gym, jiu-jitsu gym, it's eye-opening because you're like, oh my God, like these peeps can break me in half in a matter of seconds. So for you, as like, a collegiate athlete, someone that's obviously superior, athletically gifted than most people, how was it for you? How was your first day?
Fairly rough. The gym that I was at was mostly a striking gym. And at the early part of it, there wasn't a whole bunch of structure with regard to this day we're doing stand-up, this day we're doing wrestling, this day jiu-jitsu. It was basically every day beating the crap out of each other. And there was a couple guys that did pull me aside and work with me, but they didn't teach me technique. I was like, here's your gloves and you're going to go with that guy. And we just started sparring. And ultimately that's a way to see who comes back. And my coach is pretty selective on who he allows to come in and stay. And he knew my background as an athlete when I had reached out to them and asked if I can come join the team. So they knew a little bit of my background that way, but they just wanted to see was it tough? Could I tough it out? And what kind of skills I started with. And yeah, I got beat up pretty bad for a little bit with only a couple guys pulling me aside that would show me some of the technique. I didn't know how to throw a kick, punches, about as terrible as you can get, I would imagine. But it was, I did keep coming back, and then you earn the respect that, from doing that from the rest of the guys. And then that's when you start to learn more. At least that's how our gym was at the time. And so that first little bit was basically just going in there and getting my butt kicked and seeing if I could hang for a little bit. And it was eye-opening with that. I've gone around and trained with a few other gyms and different types, and there's somewhat that same mentality when you're at a new place, or like if I'm home in Arizona, sometimes I'll train at Fight Ready. The first time I went there, a couple of the guys, went pretty hard on sparring, but fortunately by the time I was there, I had some experience in MMA, so I can handle myself a little bit. But that was how the start was. It was rough, but I loved the competition, which is why I started it. I wasn't done competing. I felt like an injury took me away from sports with football. And I didn't feel done. It felt like there was some unfinished business. So I didn't really know where it would take me. I didn't even know if I was going to have an actual fight. When I first started, I just wanted to compete, and in the gym is a place to compete. And then I think it was 6 months later, I had my first amateur fight.
And like within those 6 months, like I know it might be like just like a real broad question, because like it says, like over time your skills just develop. But for you, like through that first rough patch, do you remember like that one day that you're like, oh crap, it's starting to click a little bit. We're getting there. I see progress.
Well, actually, I was kind of surprised when my coach had said, called me and said, "Do you want to fight?" Because he called me on a Wednesday and was like, "Hey, they need somebody. Do you want to fight on Saturday?" And I was like, "I guess if you think I'm ready." Yeah. But most of my, I was pretty confident in just my stand up, not so much the kicks, but the stand up, because of that prior 6 months of in there just throwing down with my teammates. And then with the football background and somewhat of I wrestled from middle school all the way through high school, so it was more fresh then. So I was comfortable with basically a tackle or a double leg. And I think the other guy, it was his debut, or he had one other fight also. So I just was like, well, he's just as inexperienced as I am. And it was one of my teammates, when I went in there, his advice was, make the first contact, punch him first. And for that particular fight, that was probably the best advice I could have had, because you never know how you're going to react when you get hit with 4-ounce gloves versus the boxing gloves or the sparring gloves that we have that are more padded in a more controlled area. So I remember throwing a jab and just snapping the guy's head back, and that kind of setting the tone for the rest of the fight. It could have easily been the other way around, and I could have been like, "Oh crap, I don't like this at all." But I got into the fight that way, and it was for that very first fight. That was the best advice I could have had going into that fight.
That's awesome. And then after that first fight, tell me about everyone around you, family, friends, teammates. What were their reactions after your first bout? Because I can probably think they're probably on cloud 9. You're like, man, we just saw this man just fight another human being in a cage right now. Like adrenaline levels must be on like an all-time high.
Yeah, well, at that time, I was working like a desk job, in an insurance desk job, and a lot of the people that I was working with, they came and they see me in a suit and tie every day, and then I'm walking into a cage, and some of them are like, "Oh, you're crazy," but I'm still going to come watch and see. But I had. And it's a small, it's an amateur show, so it's like a small hotel venue, but I think there's like 50 people on just one side of the cage that were all just like going crazy. And that rush, I was addicted right away. The rush of winning from that point on was, it's what I'm always chasing.
No, yeah, definitely, man. And then after that first fight, I saw that you had not a couple, a lot of amateur fights before going pro. So for you, during all that time, you know, in the amateur scene, like, do you feel like it prepared you, like, you know, really well by the point that you got to your pro debut? Because it's like most people, from what I've seen, is like they get like, you know, 4 or 5 fights, but then you've had a, you know, a good amount. So for you, do you feel like that helped your skill get to the point that, you know, where you are today in the UFC?
Definitely. And Michigan, I think, is fairly unique that way. A lot of fighters that you'll see that come out of Michigan will have a decent amount of amateur fights. I had 11, and I was about to fight for a title before I had my pro debut. So I backed out of the amateur fight to take the pro fight. But it's one of those things that I had so much cage experience going in to becoming a pro. So even my first pro fights, and I'm fighting somebody that, let's say they're 2-0 as a pro, but only a couple amateur fights. I've got so much more cage time than they had. Now at this level, everybody's about the same with the cage time. But early in my pro career, that definitely helped and made me feel ready to take that jump to becoming a pro. Because even through my amateur career, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be pro, if I was good enough to be pro. You know, I wasn't sure. And all of the regional belts in the organizations around Michigan where we were fighting were all held by my teammates. So I never fought them, never got to fight for a belt or anything. So I didn't necessarily feel like if I was good enough. Like all my teammates are here, and you know, they beat me up at practice. Some days I have a better day than them, and they've all got the belts. Like maybe I'm just a guy here that's going to work and compete at the amateur level, and that might be fine. But when that first opportunity came for pro, and I talked with you know, my coach and my dad, and it was just, yeah, I guess we'll see where this goes.
And man, and it took you a long way. It took you to the top, man. It took you all the way to the Ultimate Fighter. So, you know, I was watching, like, you know, a small clip that you had with the media there, talking about how you know, you got onto the show as an alternate, but you also, like, you know, decided to stick around in Vegas to you know, just in case, you know, you got like a short notice call from Uncle Dana. So you ultimately did get that call from Uncle Dana. So how was it, you know, meeting him for the first time? Because I can imagine for a lot of people, nerve-wracking. Like, this is probably the number one guy in the sport, and he's about to give me my shot. So for you, like, you know, give us the feeling, you know, throughout that whole day, like the nerves, the thoughts that you were going through your head.
Well, I actually didn't know. So that first scene, when I come onto the Ultimate Fighter and I'm meeting Dana, I didn't know that I was going to have that meeting or even talk with him like that until, so my dad dropped me off at the Apex Center where they were filming the training for that night when I came in. And I'm getting, like, they take my bags and then they're miking me up and they're like, okay, we're going to go into Dana's office here. And that's when I learned that I'm going to speak with him. So there was zero time to really process that. I'm still processing, like, oh, like they actually called me, I'm going to be on the show.
Yeah.
And then they're bringing me in to meet Dana White. And it was, so I think because I didn't have a lot of time to process it, it wasn't too nerve-wracking. He obviously is, you know, commands a presence, or, you know, has that that presence about him that, like, he's the boss in the room when you're talking with him. But you know, the things that he said, you know, that I did the right things. I stayed around. You know, that I'm ready. I came in ready, and I'm his kind of fighter, is what he said, and he loved my story. Because he's a guy who means what he says when he says it, you could take it at face value and know that he's not a guy that's going to blow smoke. So that really, really pumped up some confidence for me that okay, he sees that I'm a fighter, he sees that I'm here, and that I am, you know, I've given up a lot to be here, and he respects that. And that's how that first meeting went. I was just, it boosted up some of my confidence in myself.
Yeah, definitely. And then, you know, he brings you out to meet the team, and, you know, watching it as a fan, like, you can see that there's a good amount of tension in the room, obviously, because, you know, on Ortega's team, you know, one of their fighters got injured. You took their spot. I mean, you took his spot. But for you, like, walking in there, was the tension, like, as, like, real as it seemed, like, through the TV? Because through the TV, it seemed like you can probably hear, like, a pin drop there, and, like, you know, before obviously they started arguing. But for you, like, how
Right.
did it feel when you started walking in there?
Well, there was definitely you could feel the tension, but also because the guys didn't know what was happening. They weren't told what was happening. I didn't know what team I was coming into, so I'm just I don't know the setup. I've not been there for any of the filming. Some of the guys I'd recognized. So the week that there's a week that we got there where we all went through medicals and different protocols in a quarantine. And so there was a group of guys that I did all my medicals with that they recognized me coming in. So that they were like, oh, we've seen this guy before, but like, what's going on? So there was definitely some tension. And, you know, again, they don't give you much direction. They just mic you up and Dana says whatever he's going to say. That's when I found out I was on Team Ortega. And then obviously the coaches started fighting. I'm sitting here just like, I don't know what's happening. Like, I just got here, guys.
No, yeah, definitely, man.
But both teams and both coaches were incredibly welcoming. After the argument that Brian and Alex had, Alex did come up to me and was like, hey, that had nothing to do with you, you know, welcome to the show, stuff like that. So that was everybody, even both teams and coaches were pretty welcoming after that. But it was definitely like, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, but then again, it's like you said, it's like, you know, after that, like, you know, everyone, you know, met, like, was like, hey, no hard feelings, and like you said, a great experience. And for you to be on a team with one of like the goats in jiu-jitsu, Henry Gracie, and then also or Brian Ortega, that's, you know, a beast in his own right. How was it working with them, you know, preparing for a fight that you basically took on 2 days notice, you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's 2 days notice, but then you're also getting, you know, awesome work with, you know, greats in the sport.
Right. Well, when I came in that day, so they bring me in, they do the introductions and all that. Right after that, the evening time was Team Ortega's second training time. And so I went right into training. I talked with two of the coaches first who had told me who I was fighting, because even at that point, I just met Gilbert, like as in a face-off, which again is a real crazy thing to just come in and be like, all right, now face off with this guy that you're fighting in a couple of days. So they told me what they knew about him from what they researched they did trying to prepare Miles for him. And so we went through that and immediately into a training, but it was not that long. It was like 45 minutes maybe. And then I had to go do all of the other media stuff that the guys had already done. All the photographs, the videos and stuff that you see on their intros. And so I didn't have a lot of time still at that moment to process anything. And then the next day was more weight cutting, or no, the next day was actually the weigh-ins. I finished cutting weight that morning. So I didn't get a lot of time with Henner before my fight, but I was still able to take some of the things that he had taught me in the fight. And when Gilbert's on my back in the fight, I'm doing the things that Henner just went over with me. So I was able to retain it, but if I would have had more time with him, the way that he teaches and how good of a teacher he is, he makes things and breaks them down where they seem so simple. And with jiu-jitsu, it's like, oh, if you just turn your hand this way, it's like 100 times tighter of a choke. And I'm just like, how are these things? They're so simple, but why don't you think about them? But if you don't have, you know, if you got a Gracie there teaching you those things, it just seems so simple.
No, yeah, big time, man. Yeah, man. And then, like you said, I do have this question too, as well, right? So, you know, after like your bout, were you able to like stick around and get more work with the team? Obviously, like, you know, in sparring or maybe helping, you know, some other teammates on the team to get prepared for their fights.
Yeah. So it's they keep you around. You don't leave. You're still in the house with all the guys. And so I was the main partner for both Andre and for Trayshawn for their fights coming up. And so, but the focus of the training was on them. So I didn't get the focus that I would have liked to have with them. And rightfully so, right? These guys are getting ready for a fight, and the coaches are focusing on the athletes that they still have in the tournament. But I still feel like I did get some good quality work and learned quite a bit that last little bit of time that I was there. And it's just one of those things where I wish I was there the whole time with that caliber of ground coaches, and because that's an area that I know that I want to grow in, and I need to grow in the sport, with my gym being mostly, a striking gym that we came out of. That ground game is something I can improve on. So having Hannah Gracie there, it'd have been fantastic to be there longer.
No, yeah, definitely, man. And fast forward to now, man, February 26th, man, your next fight, and you're dropping down to welterweight, because while on the show you were a middleweight. Is it going to be new territory dropping down to welterweight, or have you competed in welterweight before?
No, I most of my career I've competed at welterweight. I actually put on some weight and some muscle mass with my strength and conditioning coach for the show at 185. So I have to get some of that weight off. So the weight cut, it's going to be, no weight cut's ever fun, but it's going to be a little bit harder, I think, than some of the other ones. But I'll get there, no problem, at the end of the day. But I typically fight at 170, and I even fought at a catch weight at 165 before, because I was flirting with going down to 155. But getting to 165, I thought I was really close to death, it seemed like. So 55 will never happen for me.
Yeah. It's just mind-boggling to me, especially like you said, you're a former collegiate football player. I'm assuming while you were playing football, you were definitely, in the plus 200. So the fact that like maybe, you're considering going to drop to 155 is just crazy to me. But yeah, man. So for you,
that was a crazy thought for me too. When I played football, I was my senior year, I was about 210, and I played wide receiver. So that was about the highest that I got, was 210. But when I started MMA, I just started to lean up. So with football, you're lifting 5 days a week, basically, and eating so many calories to try to keep up with the multiple workouts that you have. And MMA was different. And so like the weight just fell off. And so my first couple of fights were at 185, but the weight just kept falling. And then I was like, well, I can make 170. And I was making that really with no problem. And then a couple of times I weighed in under 170, and I was like, well, maybe 155. And so I took a catch weight at 165 just to see how low I can get, because I would never want to accept a fight at 155 and then you didn't show up at 170. Like, that's not how the sport works or how it should work. Some people try that, but so I got, a promoter agreed and found somebody for me at 165, and I made it, but it was terrible. It hurt to make it there. I felt fantastic in the fight though, after I rehydrated and everything, but getting down there was terrible. And I don't know how I can get another 10 off from that. So 170 is where my home will be.
Oh man, definitely. And I do have to ask you this, right? Especially since you played football, that means you must have had the team. So what's your favorite team? What's your favorite football team?
I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Well, it's definitely not a good thing, especially with my Giants stuff in the background.
I saw that in the back. No, it's but we're actually at this point, we're in the same position, right? No longer in the we're looking at draft day now, both of us.
Yeah, that is true. But then again, you guys made it to the playoffs. We haven't even smelled a wild card game since 2016. So I don't know. Maybe let me ask you though, right? As a Dallas Cowboys fan, what do you think of the season? Even though you lost in that crazy game against the Niners, what did you think? Yeah,
they've had some really good teams, and I think this year was probably their best team that they've had. And it's one of those things with football. Like if it's on a day, and even I guess fighting any sport, there's a day that you're not clicking or things aren't going as they should, and you know, in a tournament style like the playoffs, you lose and you're done. And for some reason with the Cowboys, it's been a long time that when they get to the playoffs, it's like the wheels fall off. Like, they've had really great seasons, and people will say it's because the division's not that great, but they play teams outside of division and beat them as well. And I went and we watched the Cowboys at the Chargers this year. And they played fantastic. It was a close game against a good team, and they pulled it out at the end there. So it's just like there's something that's happening once they get to the playoffs now that I'm not sure how they can get over that hump. The coaching seems to be great. The players are real good. I guess in the playoff game, the first time you reach the red zone is the fourth quarter. That's not a recipe for success in football.
Yeah, definitely. But I do have to ask you though, how'd you become a Cowboys fan, especially being from Michigan? Did you have family in Texas, or it was kind of one of those things that they were the only team on TV and you're like, hey, I like that team, I'm picking them?
Oh, well, no,
Yeah.
I'm originally from Arizona. So,
Okay.
and that also doesn't make sense for being a Cowboys fan, but my grandparents are from Texas and they were Cowboys fans. So my grandparents, my dad, my massive Cowboy fans. There's a couple people in our family. My cousin Brian, he's a 49er fan. So the loss to them hurts a little bit more in a family rivalry. But yeah, most of my family ended up being Cowboys fans, and I think it links back to my grandparents being from Texas.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And like, I do have to ask this too. What are your picks for the Super Bowl? Because again, my picks absolutely gone. I didn't expect Green Bay to beat out that quick, but at this point, I'm just
No, but mine are gone as well. I think it's a toss up on who's there, because I thought for sure that the Buccaneers were going to make it just because Tom Brady has the playoff magic, it seems like, and the Bills. And here we are. Well, that was a crazy game too.
That's another crazy game too. I honestly, I don't, how do you lose a game after you score with 13 seconds left? And it's Patrick Mahomes for you, huh?
To me, I thought the Bills should have squib kicked it and take some time off the clock. It's a big fella. They just kick it and you get 13 seconds. In a football with timeouts, it's like the end of a basketball game, right? Where the last minute is actually 14 minutes or something like that. In football, if you got 3 timeouts in 13 seconds, I mean, if you think about it, these guys are running 40-yard dashes and 4-3, so they get down the field real quick. So I thought they should have taken some time off.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like this might like piss off a lot of Bills fans, but I'm kind of happy that they ended up losing. I want the Giants to be the last team to win a Super Bowl in the state of New York, even though they don't play in New York, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the Bills are good too.
Yeah.
That's going to be, that should be a pretty decent rivalry, but man, I think Mahomes is going to be hard to beat then, after that. And a team winning like that, the high that they've got to be on and the momentum that they can carry that through, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. So again, man, just to bring it back to you. And again, this has been a really fun interview. I'm kind of happy that we kind of had to squash the Cowboys Giants beef there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So like, before we go though, do you want to plug in all your social media handles that everyone watching can, go and follow you?
Yeah. The main one that I use is Instagram. So it's the gentleman_Gilmore. I just started a TikTok, and honestly, I don't know what that name is, and I don't do a lot on it. But if you want to follow me there as well, I think we'll look it up real quick.
You come from a family with 3 or more girls.
See, I don't even know how to look it up. Oh, you got the gentleman_Gilmore also. There we go. I'm trying to work on that as well. I think that might be one of the next biggest, not next, it already is big. I'm just late to the party with it. But yeah, definitely on Instagram is where I could use, the followers there to help with sponsorships and all that. But I think, did you probably reach me on Instagram or email?
Yeah, Instagram and email. So there you
go. but I do try to like, when my fights are announced, I get so many messages from people, and I really do make an effort to try to get to everybody that I can, and whether it's just liking their comments, there are people that talk shit. I won't necessarily respond to you, but I might like your comment if it's funny. So if that's what you choose to do, just make it funny. I've got thick skin, so no, it's not gonna bother me. But it's annoying when it's not funny. It's like, well, I guess you're just talking trash to, like, at least be good at it.
Yeah, right.
Then I'll be cool with it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, man. So there you go. So everyone watching, go follow Michael. And again, thank you. Hopefully we can do this again in the future. And
definitely.
Yeah, man. And to everyone watching, peace.